Hello, everyone. I'm Daxin from Vienna, Vienna PM. Another module comparison. My talk is about the state of the art of software translation with message catalogs, which is the biggest part of localization. The other part is a rather small part, like adapting date formats or currency formats and stuff like that. So in code, this means you have a string like that in your original language, let's say English. Then you wrap it in a function, and then this one will take care to take the desired user-facing language and look it up in a sort of catalog, which can be a file or something else. So these are my criteria. They are also in the talk abstract. Don't worry about those. I will repeat them later in detail. And my criteria are subjective, but hopefully, if we think alike, hopefully useful for you too. The candidates are libintl Perl, also known as locale text domain and locale text domain OO. I disqualify maketext. Of course, you should know this by now. The original author stated in his article to the Perl journal, this is what translation software is currently missing. This was back in '99. We need to have plural forms because it's important, and he was right. And this is how we solve it. We have this quant function, this magic quant function. Now it's 18 years later, and this quant function never materialized. So you can't use maketext in the general case. Sorry, but it's true. There are other modules which are married to frameworks. Actually, this is not true because Mark was sitting next to me just 1 hour ago and told me you can use this also without the rest of the modules contained in this distribution, which is nice. I made some progress with him. It's really nice when you have the original author sitting next to you, and found some bugs. So I won't present about this, but hopefully this gets fixed soon. Also, uninteresting stuff which can be done by lower level modules, and we are not interested in upper level modules. Untitled locale text domain assumes that the user lived through the 1990s, already knows the C counterparts, the C library libintl, and the command line tools contained in the package named getText. And for those who have not, the design decisions contained in the code of the module look just like a mess. It ships with a whole character encoding library, think like encode, just inside this one. There's a huge missive sowing fear, uncertainty, and doubt about the UTF-8 flag in the hearts of the users. I don't know what's that about. And text returned from the library codes is in encoded form, so you get octets. And the rest of string handling Perl works on decoded text strings instead. All of these might have been good decisions back then in the 5.6 era, but it's no excuse to continue with these practices. The C API is typical, gnarly. Usually, when Perl wrappers are created for C libraries, they put some sugar on top so that you're not exposed to raw function calls, but this is not the case in this library. And it says pure Perl in its abstract, but if you run the code normally, like the synopsis says, you get the XS version, and if you want the pure Perl version, you have to tell it explicitly. Now the usage in a web application, because this whole system is based on in a time where desktop applications were more prevalent than server applications in terms of localizing them. The support is an afterthought. It shows. The documentation never mentions the word thread, as in lack of thread safety. Here's some code that demonstrates the brokenness. Let's have a look. Reload the library. This is the text domain, which is just a fancy way of saying a namespace, so that translations do not trample over each other. Here's the directory where the translation files are stored. Then here's a helper function. This module is also contained in this distribution, and we are running a web application. So we're first looking at the accept header and use this helper function to tell the translation framework what language it was, and then it will go and pick the right catalog for the right language. And we are marking up the translatable strings with double underscore, and it says if you find the this string as a key in the lexicon, replace it with a 1 for the appropriate language, and then this function will return the translated string. We wait 1 second here, concatenate a second string, and then just return it out as a web document. Here's our test client for accessing this web server. We define 2 languages, Arabic and Dutch. We loop 100 times, wait a random time between 0 and 1 second, pick a language at random, and then make an HTTP call to the server there, and use the accept header with one of those 2 languages. Okay. The output of this is, So in the middle of a request, it switches from Dutch to Arabic, or the other way around. And to add insult to injury, these are returned as octets. So you get an encoding mess. That's not nice. So you have a deeper look in the documentation. You look for server, and you will find this module. It's called getTextDumb, locale unaware implementation. It contains these sentences. Important, capital letters. This module is experimental. It may not work as described. You will soon reach limits with this approach. Normally, you should not use this module. Does this inspire confidence in you? People are shaking their heads. Yeah, that's too bad, because that's actually the only thing that works for server applications. You cannot, though you cannot use the example code in the documentation contained in this module, because that would be too easy. Instead, you have to change it like this. So the change is we use a different helper function here. We load an extra module. This is just necessary for switching the back end to getTextDumb instead of the default XS implementation. And here at this part where we look at the accept header, we are using our different language, different helper function, and assigning this to the environment lang variable. The output of this is correct, which is nice, what we wanted. So the change, it was necessary to use a different function. Web set locale is not cannot be used anymore, because it calls the system calls set locale under the hood. But this particular backend, getTextDumb, does not care about the results of set locale anymore, because the title, its title abstract was locale unaware implementation. So we have to do something else. We have to pass the accept header manually. This is what this function does, and then pick the language with the highest ranking. This is what the index 0 does, and then assign it to the language variable, because although it says it's a locale unaware implementation, it still looks at the environment variable. Surprisingly, writing into the environment is thread safe. It works. Why? I have no idea. But I'm not probing any further. So let's have a look at the criteria. Is it easy to get results quickly? No, not that nicely designed documentation is sometimes user hostile and misleading. It's very difficult to get to work with a simple server application. I was only successful because I'm a seasoned programmer, and a newcomer would have likely given up, or needs to ask someone else for help. Does it work correctly? Yes, certainly it works correctly once you know where the bad parts are, or the non-working parts. Is there support for name placeholders and grammatical features like numerals and genus? Yes, there is. Only the very oldest implementations of getText have no support for name placeholders or numerals. Genus is, I will talk about this later. Do you get an understanding of the translator's workflow from the documentation? Yes, there's it's not called example, it's called sample. There's a directory contained within the distribution, and you can learn from this how things work. If you're involved not only by yourself in your language, and you do not do the translation, but someone else does, then you can learn how this works all together. And since this is just a small wrapper around getText, libintl, and the related tools, you can look up information about this. It's not very Perl specific in this case. So if you know how this works from a different programming language, then it will be very familiar. Thread safety. Yes, it's thread safe once you know the trick, how to use the different module. Does a catalog require post-processing? Yes, you cannot just use the extracted PO files. You need to compile them to MO files. This is the only thing that works with this library. How's caching handled? When you load the module, the internal catalog will be populated from the files. So at begin time, you cannot invalidate the cache without breaking the API, but that's not nice. So usually it means restarting the application. If you change the files, you need to restart. How's message extraction handled? It refers to the xgetText command line tool. This is not part of this distro, but of a different system package called getText. It comes with its own switch for different programming languages, -L. But if you say they are Perl, it won't recognize all the marked up strings which you put in your source code.
What do you mean exactly by message extraction?
It means, remember on the first slide where I showed that you have a function wrapped around your string. Extraction means populating now the catalog with these untranslated strings. Then you give the untranslated strings to your translator, and then you will fill the second half of the catalog. The keys in the original language to the values in the target language, user-facing language. So instead, you have to tell how these keywords look manually. Out of convenience and as a historic artifact, they are all starting with double underscore in the Perl world. This step is not properly documented, but the README file mentions the sample directory, again wrong here. And it has a make file with the right incantation. So here you specify the keywords, and then it will find all your Perly stuff code and make the PO file out of it, the translation catalog. Local text domain OO is our second candidate. Documentation exists to a good amount, but there's no runnable synopsis of the whole process. There's only bits and pieces. There's also no tutorial which teaches a whole process from the start to the finish. Instead, you get a architectural overview diagram. Looks like this in the documentation. You can't oversee it, but you have then figure out by yourself what's important here and how things relate to each other. This means altogether it's not very easy to get started, but the tests and examples contained within the distribution help very much, because you can run them, modify them, and see how stuff works and what minimal use cases are. Sometimes the documentation is insufficient. For example, if you call the constructor, as shown in the synopsis of the main document, you get an instance of this class. But then if you look up the class, there's nothing in there. It's just boilerplate. Functional interface also exists, but super weird. It requires you to assign to a global variable that has been exported. It looks like this. So since it's an OO module, which is very configurable, there's a lot more boilerplate code as expected. So here we load this functional interface, and it exports this variable $log_ref and some other helper functions which we need for marking up. And the rest of the application is quite similar. Here at runtime, we assign to this variable, and then with the configuration stuff, again, we pick the language from the accept header or English as a fallback. The domain, the namespace is the same as before. This is taken from the local text domain example application contained where you can learn from. And we need to configure the backend plugin, something. I forgot the details. Doesn't matter. The next one is this is the configuration of the backend here. We have to tell it where the files live. There's a mapping of these kind of parameters to the order of here. So I'm using the directory share locale again, because this is what the Linux file system hierarchy standard prescribes. And the rest is as before, and the output is correct. No surprise here. It's easy to get results quickly. No, you have to take time to experiment the first time, but once you get used to it, then you can refer to what you have learned before. Does it work correctly? As we've seen, yes. Is there support for named placeholders? Yes, there is. They also come with customizable formatters. This is something which you can, where you can, there are a number of pre-defined formatters, for example, for numbers, or you can write your own ones in pure Perl and make placeholders nicer that way. And again, numerous, yes, is part of supported grammatical feature, but Genos is not. Do you get an understanding of the translator's workflow? Nope. But if you know it from a different project, then you can figure it out by yourself again. Thread safety, you've seen the example. Yes, it's usable. Nothing wrong there. Does a catalog require post-processing? No. You can use the raw PO files, which half of the world is doing anyway, because in JavaScript land they're also compiling, not compiling the PO files to MO files. Working with plain text does not incur disk access time penalties anymore. That was the reason back in the 1990s why the MO files were invented anyway. So,
if you cache them in memory, you want to.
Say again?
If you cache all these tables in memory, they can get rather large. So you can store a binary.
Mark said if you cache the tables in memory, they can get rather large. The internal catalog is created at runtime, as we've seen. If you want to switch the language in your server application, then this is required. Otherwise, you can lift it up to begin time if you want to. And it can also not be invalidated except by restart. How does message extraction look like? This does not come with its own tool. Instead, you install a different distribution, -extract. Then you pick your type of extractor according to the source file, either Perl and Template Toolkit is supported. There are also extra modules by different authors for different types. I've seen the templating system Xslate. And there's no command line tool, so less convenient, just OO code. This is a simple copy paste from the synopsis there. And yeah, once you know what you want to have and what you're doing, you can just put this in a script and then call this instead. There's a problem. I found the initial extraction cannot write to a PO file because it wants to merge with an existing PO file. And then it says, where's the header? I refuse to work. So instead of the workaround, you can just, for the first run, Bootstrap make a naked PO file with nothing in it, so you get the header, and then the rest works nicely. So in summary, it's a wash. They're both nice. They both do what you need. Pick one, be happy. The only thing lacking is like more better and accurate documentation, but that's always a complaint, right? Okay, and now back to the title of my talk. Is the problem solved? Mostly yes. If you stick to the solutions I presented, this is true for translating in Perl. In other programming languages, it looks different. You will only encounter trouble with multi-plural, so messages like these, where you have this can be one or more, and this can be one or more. This is not supported by the underlying technology, or this is an example of Genos, grammatical gender. You can
supported by Lockerpoint, by my library.
Say again, please.
My library supports these features.
Mark says log report supports these features. I want to see this.
And also extraction.
And also extraction, okay. Where was I now? Okay. You can make a case distinction, but again, this is like making case distinctions for numerals. So here we have a convenient API, but here we have not. This means that the underlying format and tooling needs to be extended. And this is a topic for another time. I have an idea how to do this, and it's quite nice and won't break too much tooling. How much time do I have left? Does anyone know? I'm at the end. If we have time, I can take questions. No? Okay, and thank you. Let's go to the break.